Hey, and welcome back to video 5. So in this video here, we're going to be, as usual, at the end of every week, we're going to take a look at our own tracks and how we can actually apply everything that we've learnt to our own songs. So I'm just going to have a quick listen to my track to see where I've left it off from last week. Alright, just had a quick flick through the track just to see where it was at. There's a few things that I want to do to this. I'm going to start with the autofilter. And what I'm going to do is actually just filter out those vocal chops at the beginning for the intro. I'm just going to drag an autofilter onto it. And then you'll see it's added onto the end of this big chain here that we've built up now. So if you've been following along with your own tracks, you're probably going to start to see a similar thing with your chains and your tracks. It's going to start to get a little more complicated as we progress further. So with the autofilter, it's perfectly fine for it to sit on the end here after, like if you've got delay and reverb and everything, you can definitely put an autofilter at the end. As I mentioned before, it does matter what order you put these in, but for something like an autofilter, you actually do want to filter out the reverb and the delay as well. So I'm just going to mess around with the frequency here. I do want a low pass filter, so I'll leave it as it's come in by default. The effect that I'm looking for from this is just so that the vocals aren't too in your face yet, these vocal chops. And the filter is very handy for, things like intros and outros where you want to get rid of some elements, but you still want the elements there. So what we can do is actually just filter out a whole bunch of the frequencies. And that leaves the vocal in there, but it's just less upfront. And then we can automate this frequency up as we've done in the exercises as the track opens up as well. We can add a curve to this as well. Cool. So I'm liking that effect for the vocals there. Just a little auto filter, low pass auto filter that slowly rises up. Just check if I want to filter anything else. Yeah, I think I'll filter this lead as well. It's just a little too in our face there for the verse. And then I might open this up over the build so that once we get to our chorus or the drop, it's completely opened up. One thing I want to make a note of as well is that you don't want to go over the top with the auto filter and start throwing it on everything for the intro, because then your whole track is going to sound like it's underwater, if you get what I mean. You start getting rid of all the high frequencies on everything, it's going to sound very muffled overall. So even though I filtered out a couple of sounds here, like the vocals in this synth, I still have the drums and the hi-hats which are filling out that top end. So the whole track doesn't sound like it's muffled. Because if you go over the top with it, let me just throw it on the master here. So whatever I throw on the master is going to affect the entire track. If you do want to filter out your whole track at once, you can just do it on the master. So then your track would start to sound like this. If you're looking for that specific effect, you can definitely do that, but otherwise I recommend just throwing it on a couple of different sounds. That way you don't end up filtering the entire track. And I'm gonna put a filter on the drums, but not a low pass. I'm gonna high pass it. So what this is gonna do here is, because I've just got the kick at the intro, if I just filter this intro bit, see how I get rid of the punch from that kick? So there's not as much low end. I might do that, and then what I'll do is, instead of automating the frequency, I'm just going to automate this filter to turn off once we get to the verse. So I've got the filter selected. To get the device on and off, I can either press this to turn the effect on and off, or I can scroll to it here. I've got device on selected. Now I'm going to insert a point here, drag it down and drag it across, not too far, to there. So now you can see the auto filter is on. Once we hit the verse, it switches off. So there's no automation on the actual frequency itself. It just stays at this 140 Hertz cutoff. And now the kick kicks in to the low end as well. Alright, so I've used the auto filter a few times now. Now I might actually throw a saturator or overdrive on these vocals. We'll see what works better. Just for the drop here. Let's try an overdrive. If I have the overdrive after the auto filter, the filter is going to filter out the sound first. So it's going to filter out everything that's happening, including the sound. And then the overdrive is going to add distortion on top of this filter. So it's going to bring back some frequencies that we tried to filter out here. So that's why I was saying the order does matter. So if you wanted to filter out what was happening with the overdrive as well, you would throw this in before. So I'm just going to do that. Actually, just demonstrate it real quick. I won't affect the filter we've already got. I'll just bring another one in. I'll put this down. So if I check with an EQ at the end. So what I'm going to do is filter out everything below 1K. So there's absolutely nothing above 1K, as we can see in this filter. So if I play this without the overdrive, you can see that's pretty much cut off at 1K. Now if I turn the overdrive on, see it's adding a few more tones up to here, so we're actually peaking almost at 2.5-ish. So you do have to be aware of that if you want to filter something out, make sure you put the filter after your saturation, because if you put saturation on it, whether it be from the overdrive or the saturator, it is going to add some more frequencies, especially if you turn up the drive. If I crank the drive here, turn up the dry wet, now you can see we've got frequencies that are all the way at 10K. Whereas here, we've actually filtered out everything below 1K. Now that we've saturated it again, we're adding more frequencies to it. So just be aware of that. If you do want to filter something out perfectly, you have to have the filter out on the end. Okay, so I'm just going to drag the overdrive before the filter. Might actually use a saturation for this one. A saturator. Just be aware as well that when you do turn up the drive on the saturator, that it's going to affect the volume as well. So it's going to add that distortion, warmth, and it's going to also add volume. So if you don't want it to get any louder, You can either turn it back with the output or just turn down the track overall. So if you're happy with the volume you had before and you just want to add some saturation to it, you can dial it back with the output here, or one of the other methods. You can dial it back with one of those two methods. You should be able to use these numbers as a guide as well, because you are adding 10 or close to 11 decibels of drive. It's probably a safe bet that you could dial it down the same amount and you get a close to similar volume. Just going to select everything and bring it down a touch. You can tell if your track's clipping because on the master channel, if I go to session view, you'll be able to see it better. And I'll turn these back up. It starts going red and this number goes positive. So that's what you don't want. Okay, now we're not clipping anymore. So we've added some subtle saturation to these vocal chops here. I might do the same to my drums as well. So I'm going to throw a saturator on. If I double click it, it's just going to add it to the end of the chain. So I might just put it before my filter here. So at the beginning, it does filter out the distortion as well. It's only going to be subtle for these anyway. So with the saturator, you can also dial it up, the drive, until it's too much. And then what you can do is just slowly bring it back from there until you get a nice middle ground. So for me, it's around there for these drums. I'll just bring back the output a bit. Okay, so we've added some nice subtle saturation to the drums and the vocal chops. What I might do is on this synth lead here, might add a little bit of chorus to it. So I'm going to throw the chorus on. So already instantly, I've just thrown it on there, left it default. It's added a nice little effect to it if I turn it on and off. I'm going to move this around. So it sounds quite nice when it's really pushed a little bit harder, the chorus, especially through the break. But not so much for the rest of the track. So what I'm going to do is just automate the dry wet down. So I've just put a point in for the break at 85%. I'm going to have it around 30% for the rest of the track. And then also bring the rates down a little bit for the rest of the track. So just during my break, the rate is up, and you can also tweak the amount as well if you want. So just remember, you can automate anything. So just to keep it fresh in your minds, you can automate almost anything in Ableton. So we can have a more drastic chorus for the break, but it returns to something a little more subtle for the rest of the track. Okay, very spacey, which is cool. I don't really mind because it's just a breakdown, so it can afford to be a little less structured. Alright, so we've messed around with the auto filter, the saturator, chorus, overdrive. These vocal chops sort of getting lost a bit, especially with that synth, so I'm going to put an EQ on it. Just going to double click it, add it to the end. EQ is fine, you can add it to the end of the chain. It's probably recommended to put it at the end of the chain, that way you're actually affecting all the frequencies of what's happening with all the plugins, with all the effects. So with these vocals, just going to mess around with some frequencies here to find something I like. So I think I want to add a bit of top end to them, so I'm just going to bring up this high shelf. Maybe bring out the mids a little bit. So we can see what the EQ is doing just by flicking it on and off here while we're playing. I'm not going to EQ this too much because we are going to jump into mixdown quite soon and we'll be covering all aspects of that. But doing creative EQ is definitely recommended at this stage. So just with those vocals, just a bit of shine missing, so I just added that with the high end. And then I just took out some of the mids there. So you can see here they sound a little more muffled. Once I bring that EQ in, it just brings them out, makes them pop a little bit more. See if we can make this bass a little chunkier. I'm going to try a saturator. Now saturator works really, really well on basses because it brings out, because you are adding drive and distortion, it's going to bring out a lot of frequencies that weren't there before, especially if you have a sub bass or a bass that has very little to no high end and you want some of that grit to come out, you can get that with the saturator. So you can see we can push this quite hard and it still sounds good. Even if you pushed it really hard, let's say we go to a hard curve, you're getting that funky kind of distorted bass sound, which works quite well still. So the saturator does work very well on basses and, you know, lower frequencies, because it's going to bring out a lot of those upper harmonics that weren't there before. So leave it somewhere around there. So as I switch it on and off, you'll notice adds a little more top end with that drive. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And then I do want to try and make use of everything I've shown you today, so we'll actually add it on this guitar here. We'll use the overdrive. We haven't used that yet. See if we can get something nice that will work with it. So more often than not, just pulling down the bandwidth on this filter helps quite a bit if you want it less drastic. That's adding quite a nice little overtone there. What we can do is just bring down the dry wet a touch. So I just want it to be subtle on this. Yeah, I'll probably leave it around there. Just adds a nice little warmth to that top end. Just adds a little more grit to it. Just going to quickly try a bit of overdrive or saturator on this pluck here. Let's try saturator. Yeah, happy with that. Maybe we can have a play around with the wave shaper. Okay, that sounds quite cool. Nice little distorted flute sound. Just bring it down a touch. Alright. So I've pretty much used all those effects that we've covered today. These are some fun ones, especially once you get into the distortion. So start doing this on your own tracks, pretty much go through the process that I just went through here. See if there's any way you want to add filters or EQs, any saturation, distortion, whatever you want to add. The chorus as well. And then, yeah, just start throwing those on your tracks, experimenting with them, and also automating them if you need to automate them. Because that's where the creativeness is really going to come in once you start automating and changing these things over time. Those are the things that make your track a lot more unique and, you know, fun to listen to. So that pretty much covers it for this video. I just wanted to show you an example of how I would use those effects in my own track, and so that you can translate that to your own tracks. We're going to finish up in the next video for the week, and then we'll be going over what we're covering next week. So have fun with this. Feel free to go crazy while you're testing all these effects, and, you know, see how hard you can push them before it starts to sound a bit too much. And yeah, I'm sure you've got some ideas now for what you want to do with these effects on your track, so I'll leave you to that, and then I'll catch you in the next video where we'll finish up for the week.